I think it is fucking insane what Donald Trump is saying, 100%. But if this is the point of contention that the Democrats want to raise, it is only going to further make the dummies in general in the American public think, oh, they just want more war. Like Donald Trump is ending the war and these guys just want more war. Let's hear what Bernie has to say.
Witnessed an extremely sad moment in American history. We saw the President of the United States aligning himself with the dictator of Russia, Vladimir Putin, to undermine the independence of Ukraine and its democracy. Let's be clear. Trump is showing us that he sees one of the world's most brutal dictators as his friend. And
it's not meant to be a gotcha. Can you explain what the U.S. did denazification if they were so anti-communism? Wait, what? Denazification was unsuccessful and didn't really happen in Germany.
Now,
but I don't want to get into that.
Democratic allies in Europe as his enemies. He wants a world that is safe for authoritarians and oligarchs, but extremely dangerous for democracies. It will not surprise you when I tell you that Trump is lying, as he so often does. Yesterday, Trump said that Ukraine started the war. That's not true. Russia invaded Ukraine twice, first in 2014 and then again in 2022. Right now, Russia occupies about 20% of Ukraine. Since Putin's horrific invasion, over 1 million people have been killed or injured. Every single day, Russia continues to rain down hundreds of missiles and drones on Ukrainian cities. Putin's forces have massacred civilians and kidnapped thousands of Ukrainian children, bringing them back to Russian re-education camps. These atrocities led the International Criminal Court to issue an arrest warrant for Putin in 2023 as a war criminal. Further, Trump called Ukrainian President Zelensky a dictator. That's not true either. Zelensky won 75% of the vote in free elections. In fact, his approval rating is higher than Trump's. In the midst of a brutal war, Ukraine's parliament continues to function and free and unfettered political debate takes place. Trump claimed that our European allies have done little to support Ukraine in its fight against Putin's invasion. He said the United States has contributed 3 times more than Europe. But that's another lie. In fact, Europe has provided more aid to Ukraine than the United States. But it's not just that Trump is lying again. That's not new. It's what this all reveals about where he wants to take our country, and in fact, the entire world. Trump is cozying up to Vladimir Putin. So who is Putin? And what kind of world does he want to build? Putin is a dictator who crushed Russia's movement toward democracy after the end.
Okay, from a purely aesthetic standpoint, I think it is fucking insane what Donald Trump is saying, 100%. But given how unpopular like supporting Ukraine is in the United States of America, I don't know if this is not for Bernie. Obviously, Bernie talks about domestic issues. That's his bread and butter. He talks about it all the time. But if this is the point of contention that the Democrats want to raise, it is only going to further make the dummies in general in the American public think, oh, they just want more war. Like Donald Trump is ending the war and these guys just want more war, if that makes sense. It's not, I wouldn't even say it's entirely correct. I'm just saying that that is the way it looks. And I feel like the Democrats have better issues to argue about right now. Would rather have the Dems die on that hill, to be honest. So we shouldn't talk about it? No. First of all, I've covered it extensively for the past 3 days to a degree where everyone is yelling at me and actively telling me to shut the fuck up about it and move on to other shit. I think I'm trying to figure out how this will be received by the broader public. Does that make sense? Like, I often talk about what issues you take on and how you take on those issues, and what the broader reception is for for whatever issue that you're talking about. Okay. And I think in this circumstance, like if your goal is to undermine the Trump regime, okay, doing a multifaceted approach is good. And I think that's what Bernie is doing. I think Bernie Sanders is tackling this issue from every avenue, and therefore this is appropriate for him to do. But if the Democrats hold on to exclusively this side of the bargain and not all the other things that Bernie routinely rails against, like the oligarchs controlling the government and things like that, then they're going to come across like a party that only cares about maintaining U.S. aid and a party that only cares about, saying that we have to keep giving Ukraine more weapons and we have to keep throwing Ukrainians into the meat grinder because Vladimir Putin is a thug. Now, it's true. Vladimir Putin is a thug. Okay. He is a gangster. But I don't think the American public broadly cares about that. Okay, but his intake is not exactly correct. Putin in the beginning did a lot of good because Russia was shit after the USSR fell. Literally mafia time without rules and laws. He became slowly normal, clean with social benefits. He does a terrible thing now, but he also contributed to making normal things in Russia back in the time. I mean, he was never a progressive, liberating socialist figure at all, though. It was more so that any leadership after the dissolution of the USSR was going to have to be tasked with maintaining some semblance of stability. It was complete collapse. Also, Vladimir Putin was our guy. That's the other side of the story that I think a lot of people forget.
Who crushed Russia's movement toward democracy after the end of the Cold War. Russia holds sham elections every 6 years where Putin wins 90% of the vote and authorities don't even try to hide their ballot stuffing. There is no freedom of speech or free media in Putin's Russia. Protests are violently suppressed. Tens of thousands of people are imprisoned for protesting Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Political dissidents are harassed or thrown into jail. The bravest, people like Alexei Navalny, are killed outright. Hundreds of thousands of Russians have fled Putin's brutal regime since his invasion of Ukraine. But Putin has maintained control in his country by offering Russia's oligarchs a simple deal. If you give me absolute power, I'll let you steal as much as you want from the Russian people. And that's why in a country where many are struggling economically, Russian oligarchs have stashed trillions of dollars in offshore tax accounts. That is the Russian leader that Trump admires. That is the Russian oligarchy.
The way I see Vladimir Putin is basically like if post dissolution of the USSR, a man who wanted to be the Israel of America and never got that opportunity, but he still did Israel shit. But given the historic alignments and also given Russia as a foreign regional superpower that wanted to rebuild some of its glory, they oftentimes were directly at odds with the United States of America, and therefore they were constantly treated like shit. Okay. But this does not mean that Vladimir Putin was ever a good person or ever a good leader in general, and that he was always a right-wing, pro-capitalist kleptocrat. I think that was the most revealing aspect of his interview with Tucker Carlson, where he was just like, why can't we be Israel? We want to be your Israel. We would love to be your Israel. Why did you never give us that opportunity to be your Israel, please? How do you think the relations between our allies will be if we keep aligning with Russia? I don't think that that's going to be, I don't know. I don't know if that's like entirely consequential. I think tariffs are probably more damaging in terms of like America maintaining its allegiances and commitments than aligning with Vladimir Putin. Depending on how things turn out with this ceasefire, you could have a very different attitude, in a couple months. Europeans will dump the USA faster than they know it. We're spiteful creatures. I don't think they will. But I don't know. Things are definitely changing. I think it's dangerous to have this, thought about Putin or anyone saying he's all bad and taking away credit he might have had. Not that I like him or anything. It's just not dialectic. No, I just think that any person who was in that position would do the exact same thing in terms of maintaining stability and under complete collapse. I mean, it's like looking at Israel's land reforms and being like, well, it's technically socialist. Okay, but it's also being utilized towards colonialism. It's being utilized towards maintaining the settler colonial project. You know what I mean? Like, sure, on principle, creating some semblance of stability in a country that was absolutely, utterly devastated is good. Anyway, tariffs are just money. Aligning with Putin and claiming Greenland is much more serious for Europeans. Tariffs are just money? What are you talking about? That's the most important part of everything. That is all this is. Tariffs are just money is so funny. What do you think happens when economies collapse? What do you think happens when like Europe becomes objectively poorer and poorer and poorer as a consequence of these tariffs? Yeah, tariffs are just money, except money is everything.
That he supports. But that is not the perspective of the American people. We know, and we are proud of, the fact that the United States of America is the longest standing democracy in the world. We know that many hundreds of thousands of brave Americans over the years have fought and died to defend democracy.
I wish we had more cranks, man. Like, I wish we had like real rugged anti-imperialist cranks. Like there used to be people who would take like positions that I was shocked by, you know what I mean? In terms of like foreign policy, the American Congress wasn't this uniparty on foreign policy where like everything came across like a State Department readout, Like, where are the Mike Gravells of the world? I mean, he's dead, but like, and I'm talking, the only type of cranks that we now have are like weird people that have allegiances to like, the Ba'ath Party or something. You know what I mean? Like there's never any cranks on like Bernie Sanders was regarded as a crank back in the day for his unconditional support to the, to like Latin American socialist movements and shit. Like he used to be not this guy that you're seeing now. He used to be the guy. And it's interesting because like the only cranks that are allowed in American politics in terms of like, elected representatives are people like Tulsi Gabbard. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's only in one direction. And then they're not even considered cranks after a while anyway. Oh, the funniest part is like two of the people who started the Gravel Institute went into investment banking after it fell off. Wasn't literally the Ukraine guy, the number one Ukraine guy, a Gravel Institute kid too? The dude who was like, how can I make, like the dude who went to Ukraine and then interviewed a bunch of people that work for think tanks in Ukraine with clips out of context. Like with my classic clips, Hasan is pro-Russia. And then he made like a video about how, Ukrainians were very mad about Hasan. That's like an insane thing to do, by the way. I genuinely do think that that's like wild. When you're actively hands-on in a conflict area and you're like I'm going to do drama content here. You're literally pro-Russia even now? Yes, of course. I am pro-Russia. Yes. I love Vladimir Putin. You caught me.
We also know that our allies in the world are those countries that believe in democracy, not authoritarianism. In this critical moment in our history, I hope that every American, regardless of political perspective, will stand tall and say yes to democracy, no to oligarchy, and no.
I mean, this is pretty basic stuff, and he's not wrong on the broad scopes of this conversation, the broad strokes of this conversation. Like, yeah, Donald Trump is insane.